Alright, what's going on, guys? Kaiger here. It's been a very, very long time since I've done an updated fairy tier list, and we're going to do that now. This one in front of you right here is for PvE, and this is updated to include our newest fairy, uh, Cherry, Winter Cherry. So everything is here. The only two that I haven't been able to do enough testing to really have a super solid opinion on, but talking with people, seeing some gameplay, are Hurricane and Lavender. And I apologize that some of them are off center. I tried to do them all the very same way when I cut them, but the issue is, for whatever reason in game, they have the fairies as different sizes. They have the borders as different sizes, so it's very, very hard to get this correct. I did try on this. I'm sorry. So I'm going to start from the bottom down here. We have our D tier. Uh, we have our three main ones down here. Candok does heal, but the amount isn't great. Not really doing what you need to in PvE. These other two down here, they do damage, and that's literally all they do, is they do subpar damage. It can seem like a lot if someone has it maxed out, but that will be the same thing for any fairy maxed out. Then we have Euphoria right here. She is a good fairy, as we'll see in PvP is her primary focus. She will help you in some mechanics in PvE, which is why she's at the C tier, but in general, not the greatest. Primrose I have higher than these guys down here because stun actually does work on most bosses. It's also a requirement in some bosses. It also gives you damage received down, which will help you clear some stages that you probably wouldn't have otherwise. Right here, she does some good control effects. It's the free fairy they give you, so you wouldn't expect a whole lot from her, but I would definitely find her better than these down here. Lavender, like I said, this is the one that I had the least experience with. I know he does a sleep mechanic, and then if you hit them X amount of times, it puts them out of sleep. But the idea, at least in PvP, is that you kill them during that time. We will talk about that when we get to that video. Right here, this does like low damage, but it gives you a defense buff, which with certain classes can be a boost in DPS as well. Then we go on to the next one, Viola. She does good AoE, does a knockup, which is effectual, which does work on a bunch of bosses. There are some bosses that aren't affected by crowd control of any type, but for the majority of them they are. She does good damage, has a knockup pretty good. Mistletoe, one of the very few whose basic attack actually does something, heals you, is a holy fairy, so that's obviously always going to be beneficial. As well as the dome effect. You can play a cat and mouse game in some boss pacifier very well. She will be a good bonus to your team. Licorice, she is obviously better in PvP, but she does good AoE and PvE. Rose does really good damage. She has a silence which doesn't affect most bosses, but just the damage alone puts her at the B tier. This one right here, the whole taunt mechanic can be confusing and isn't very clear what's happening during that time, but the slimes reflect damage is at kind of like the same thing with Rose. The full mechanic doesn't really work in PvE with the taunt and such, but the damage that these slimes are dealing is enough to put her in the B tier, in my opinion. Then we have Marigold. She's hit or miss. She's a slow. She's good DPS. You can play some cat and mouse games, like I said over here, with Mistletoe. but the biggest issue with her is that it could be sometimes hard to hit, as well as her animation is kind of on the long side. And the A tier, right here, he does very, very good damage. Primarily just a one-shot kind of character. Does a good burst of damage if you get him high. But there's obviously going to be better ones up there. Damage is just damage. Balloon Flower does good damage and also groups things together. Especially good if you have AoEs like Lancer. Foxglove, very powerful damage. It's so funny to press his ultimate and watch him kill things. His passive also works with several classes. If you have a shield, it gives you more crit. Very, very important. Hurricane gives you pierce and cooldown, which will allow you to cycle your abilities, especially if you use something like Fighting Will and Hurricane. You can get your cooldown very high, as well as the wind level 2 wind echo. When they release the level 3 or level 4, I expect that to be much better. Then into the S tier. Twins gives you monster damage. Obviously that's going to be very, very good. In the same boat with Winter Cherry, it just gives you so much extra monster damage, but only if they're weak to fire, and she gives them weakness to fire, which is powerful. Gypsophilia, her main thing is she stacks, and it's not you get level 1, level 2, and level 3, it's you go step by step up to level 7. And she's very good in longer fights like Guild Boss. She also prolong the moment you use her ultimate for the next 3 seconds. Any buff skill you use is extended, so she allows Priest buff to last longer. She allows Never Miss to last longer. Things like this. Anathria, very powerful. Does a big chunk of damage. Does more damage if they're under 60%. Bigger bosses like Guild Boss have larger health pools, so they're under 60% longer, so you'll be able to get even she is the highest damage unit if they're under 60%, and you're able to do that more often than not. Dandelion was kind of a confusing fairy for me for a little bit. When you can be mashing her and she's hard to cast, but once you summon her, she summons down a beam that just keeps doing ticks of damage. The only downside to this is that it obviously goes away if you swap fairies, but if you have a class that is good at staying at that class, like Judge, Marksman, something like this, then she will just do buku damage. Carnation gathers things up. It's a huge AoE. Probably one of the better AoE fairies that we have, just for the size of the AoE, what she brings to the table. Ixoria, mainly because of the buff she gives you. Dragon's Blood or whatever it's called. She gives you tons of additional effects and damage. Always going to be a big one to bring to the table. Then Sakura, while the pierce rate she's giving you may not be the most important, she has upper tier damage as well as a stun, which, as I said, works on most bosses. Let me know what you guys think for PvE down below. Until next time, guys.